Young, beautiful, and about to head overseas, Ravel Balmain had so much to look forward to on November the 5th, 1994. A model and dancer, the 22-year-old was excited to be heading to Japan the following day for a 6-month dance tour. That evening, Ravel disappeared and has never been seen again. It has been nearly 28 years since Miss Balmain vanished, and what exactly happened to her remains is a mystery that haunts her loved ones. The next morning, Jan Balmain, a ballet teacher from Soldiers Point on the New South Wales Central Coast, stood on the platform at Newcastle railway station, waiting for the train from Sydney to arrive. She was excited to see her daughter, Ravel. She had even prepared a special lunch, because the next day, 22-year-old Ravel would be leaving for her 6-week trip to Japan. The Sydney train arrived, but Ravel was not on it. Jan waited for the next one, but there was still no sign of her daughter. Worry had now set in. She made frantic phone calls to Ravel's flatmate, her friends, and to all of Sydney's hospitals. But no one had seen her. She never saw her daughter again. When Ravel went missing, it was not entirely without trace. In the days that followed her disappearance, police found evidence which would suggest foul play. Ravel's cork-heeled platform shoe was found in a rubbish bin in the Sydney eastern suburbs area of Kingsford. Her bag, makeup, diary, credit cards and the keys to her flat were found scattered near Ainslie Street. A plastic cradle from her pager also lay nearby in the gutter. She was due to meet her friend on the evening of November the 5th, 1994, but failed to keep the appointment. Her friend last spoke to her by phone at 7:15 p.m. Police interviewed a 31-year-old man who had been with Ravel on the afternoon prior to her disappearance, and he said he had driven Ravel to the Red Tomato Inn at 7 p.m. Detectives looking for clues in Ravel's bedroom found her passport and an airline ticket to Japan already packed in a bag on the floor. The day before her disappearance, Ravel had lunch with one of her best friends from school, Kate Brentnell, who described her as happier than she'd ever been. She was really happy about getting out of the escort industry and going to Japan. She had dyed her hair from platinum blonde to a softer, more natural blonde, more like her own colour. I thought it was symbolic. I remember thinking that she had never looked more beautiful. Ravel had planned for November the 5th to be her last day working as a call girl. It was also, tragically, probably the last day of her life. On that day she was working for Select Companions, an escort agency owned by a husband and wife team, Jane and Zoran Stanojevic. It was one of 2 such agencies that employed her. According to evidence presented to the coroner, Ravel telephoned Jane Stanojevic on that day to say she was available to see clients. She was told there was a booking at 4 p.m. with a Mr. Gavin Seymour of Kingsford, a surfer who earned a living packing boxes for his parents' clothing company. After that, she was scheduled to see two Yugoslav friends of Zoran Stanojevic. These clients were important to the agency because they were friends of Zoran and because he wanted to make a good impression with clients from his home country. Jane Stanojevic remembers that she pressed Ravel about the importance of being on time. "I said, 'Don't you go disappearing on me,' she told the inquest. 'I didn't mean anything by it. I just said it because she used to do that, disappear all the time.'" Okay, so this is where she went to visit the client. This is Ainsley Street. Now, you could go up Avoca Street, turn left here, or alternatively, probably even quicker, you just go along here, straight up there, McNair Avenue, and that's where Revell's belongings were dumped. So it's not far at all from the client's house. At 3:50 p.m, Ravel telephoned the escort service to say that she had arrived at the client's house. At 5:50 p.m, she called again to say that her appointment with Mr. Seymour had been concluded and that she was leaving. But according to a statement Gavin Seymour gave to police, Ravel did not leave his house at that time, but instead entered into a private arrangement with him to stay longer for cash. Such arrangements, known as moonlighting, are strictly against the rules of escort agencies, because they do not get a percentage of the girl's earnings. Ravel was still alive at 7:15 p.m. because she had a conversation with Kate Brentnell. She couldn't really talk, and I took that to mean that she was with a client, Miss Brentnell recalls. She said, "Let's meet up later and have a few beers at the Royal Hotel in Paddington." She said, "I'll call you from home in about an hour." That was the very last time Kate heard from her friend. Police interviewed her last client, and in his statement he maintains Ravel stayed with him for another hour before he gave her a lift to the Red Tomato Inn, a pub in Kingsford. He drove to the rear parking area and went to the takeaway liquor store, where he bought some cider and cigarettes. He then went home and watched TV before falling asleep, claiming he woke up later when the football came on. The last time Seymour saw Ravel, he told police, was after she had got out of his car and walked towards the back door of the hotel. Seymour admitted to police that he had paid to have sex with Ravel. Although he had a steady girlfriend, he was alone that weekend. His girlfriend was visiting her family in Brisbane, and in her absence, he used the opportunity to pawn her clarinet to pay for Ravel. Miss Oswald Seeley, who was Seymour's partner at the time, told the inquest that she had telephoned him on November the 5th, but there had been no answer. After several attempts, she finally reached him at 9:22 p.m. He sounded alert, pretty positive, she told the coroner. He said the phone had been playing up. 2 days later she had noticed scratches on Seymour's neck and finger, but dismissed both cuts as surfing injuries. When she got into his car, she noticed that the back of their station wagon, normally crammed with surfboards and junk, was empty and that the seats were laid down, flat. This did not disturb her, she said, because Samer would often let the car pile up with junk and only occasionally cleaned it out. Once they got back home to the apartment, she wondered what had motivated her somewhat lazy boyfriend to wash and hang out the sheets, which was unusual. Later, when police were questioning him about the disappearance of Revell, he had to admit that he had slept with a prostitute, so she assumed he had washed the sheets to hide the fact. Detective Sergeant Graham Mullerin, who was in charge of the investigation, told the coroner that at the time Samer was the main person of interest in the case. Samer's solicitor, requesting that his client's name be suppressed, agreed at the time that it appears to be common ground that he is the only suspect in this case. In the words of the coroner, however, at this stage there is no case against Mr. Samer in respect of anything at all. More disturbing information came to light. Jeremy Coghlan, 25, of Double Bay, was a friend of one of Revell's wealthiest clients, commodities trader Mark Colton of Palm Beach. Coghlan told police that he had heard that Revell had been whacked. Escort industry speak for murdered. According to his statement, which was tendered to the inquest, Coghlan had been at a party at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in the affluent suburb of Double Bay. He remembers he saw Colton there, who said something like, "Aren't people gullible and stupid? You've heard the story about Revell Balmain. First there was a story about an Arab prince who took her back to Saudi Arabia. What a load of crap. She's 10 foot under and no one will find her body. That's what you get for moonlighting and ripping off the brothel that she worked for, and drugging clients, stealing all their money. Basically, the owner of the brothel wanted her dead because she was destroying his business. I knew her, and she was a nasty little gold digger and coke addict that would do anything for money. Isn't it amazing what money can buy to make people disappear?" Coghlan had asked Colton what kind of relationship he had had with Revell. He said that he had pinched her from the brothel and was paying her an allowance of about $500 or $1,000 a week, and he told me that it worked out cheaper than paying the $150 to $200 an hour that they charged. He told me that he had sex with her a dozen times a week until he passed her on to his friend. Police: Did Colton tell you the name of the person who was responsible for the murder of Revell? Coghlan: No, only that he was the owner of the brothel that he had organised some girls through. In evidence to the coroner, Colton, who freely admitted booking escorts from both the agencies that employed Revell, agreed that there was a lot of gossip and rumours that the owners of escort agencies were threatening girls for meeting clients on the side. He had also heard that somebody from one of the agencies might have gone to smack her up a bit and maybe got a bit carried away, but he denied telling Coghlan that he knew what had happened to Revell, describing Coghlan's statement as absolute rubbish. Revell was a prostitute, Colton said, one of 10 that he had seen in the last 12 months. He had paid for her services and had given her a check for $1,000. because she was desperate for money and wanted to go to Japan. I felt sorry for her. He did not, he said, know anything about what happened to her. Jane Stanojevic, giving evidence to the coroner, revealed that Revel was an unreliable escort. Stanojevic told police that in the 6 weeks that Revel had worked for the agency, she had received 5 or 6 complaints about her because she was cooler than most girls. She was very particular about who she would and wouldn't see, she said. She wouldn't see anybody old, anybody ugly, anybody ethnic, or anybody who lived in a funny area. In light of this, Miss Stanojevic was asked if Revel was not therefore a poor choice of escort to send to an appointment with 2 Yugoslavs who did not speak English. Stanojevic said, "Well, no, she didn't like to see cheap people, but this would have been financially rewarding for her. They would have taken her out for dinner." Asked what she did when Revel failed to show up for the appointment with her husband's friends, Jane said, "Nothing. She did that all the time. We just sent somebody else." According to his testimony, Jane's husband Zoran did not see Revel that night, instead receiving a call to pick up another escort, Kelly, about 7:15 p.m. He took her to an appointment at Double Bay, waited for her, then took her home again. Later, he took Kelly to meet his Yugoslav friends at the Park Royal Hotel at Darling Harbour, where he waited for 2 hours before taking her to another appointment at the airport Sheraton. He did not, he testified, harm or cause any harm to come to Revel Balmain. When Zoran was asked if he had anything to do with her disappearance, he said, "No, never, no." In the 4 years that lapsed between the disappearance of Revel and the start of the inquest, police did not interview either of Zoran's Yugoslavian friends, who had since returned to Belgrade, or Kelly, the other escort. This was partly because when Jane Stanojevic gave her first statement to police in 1994, she said that Revel was supposed to see the Yugoslav clients at the Swiss Grand Hotel in Bondi. It was not until many years later, when questioned again, she said she was mistaken and had actually meant the Park Royal at Darling Harbour. Now, with her new statement backing up her husband's claim, police checked the records of both hotels and found that neither had any record of the 2 Yugoslavians staying there. Eventually, police were able to locate Kelly, the replacement escort, who could corroborate his version of events that night. Kelly, a reluctant witness, told the court that yes, she had been driven around by Stanojevic that night, that yes, she had serviced his Yugoslav friends, that yes, she had then gone to see another client at the airport Sheraton. Police checked the records of the airport Sheraton and advised the coroner they could not confirm whether either Kelly or the client had been there. Revel's mother said of her daughter, "Our daughter Revel was born in Manly Hospital on July the 11th, 1972. She was a beautiful baby, a beautiful toddler, a very loving daughter. She never forgot birthdays, Mother's Day or Father's Day. When she was a teenager, I applied to a theatre school in England for her, and she went there on exchange for a year and enjoyed it tremendously. She came back and completed her year 12. We were so proud of her achievements. She lost her way in Sydney, but she came to realise there was no future in what she was doing. It's there in the evidence. She wanted to get out. I can't understand why she got into it, because she was brought up in a loving, caring home. But when she was 4, she found her baby brother, Matthew, floating in the swimming pool. Looking back now, I don't think she ever recovered from that. It took us months, years to deal with it. Maybe she never did. When Jan was asked if she thought there was any chance that she would see Revell again, she replied, "I don't believe she's alive. I believe she has been murdered. Her life has been taken from her, so quickly and so unacceptably. We need an opportunity to say goodbye," she said. "We deserve that, and Revell deserves that." There is, however, no chance that Jan Balmain would ever be able to bury her daughter. Police concluded long ago that Revell had been murdered. They are not looking for her body. Revell's parents died without ever knowing who was responsible for their daughter's suspected murder. Her mother Jan sadly passed away on the 3rd of November 2020. Revell's father Ivor died in 2010. She said before her death that after all those years she still saw her daughter in her dreams. "She floats above me, and I cry out, 'Where are you, Revell? What happened to you?'"
And I felt like a piece of my heart was ripped from my chest. It was terrible.
Well, my dear friends, a very sad case, and even more personal for me because it was very close to home where I lived at that time in Australia. And I've never forgotten this case. Normally I don't do modern cases, but this one I thought I would definitely cover. It's always for me such a terrible shame for families of loved ones who have disappeared, who have been deliberately vanished, i.e. murdered. They don't have any closure. It's particularly sad when the parents die without knowing what happened to their son or daughter. I find that very, very sad. This is what has happened in this case, but she still has siblings and other relatives who want to know what happened to her, and if there is a body, they would like to bring it home and give her a proper burial. By the way, the client that was last with Revell, if you want to see what he looks like now, this is from the Daily Mail online, and this report was from 2018. Yeah, so this is what he looks like now. Now, he says that the police have been hounding him. He lives in Tasmania now, apparently a reclusive lifestyle. He said that because of the police, that he has lost several very well-paid jobs as a chef. He's still denying that he had anything to do with her disappearance, and if it's true, then it's a real shame that he's had to have this hanging over him all of his life thus far. If he did have anything to do with it, then he deserves it, but he's saying he didn't have anything to do with it, and even the judge at the inquest said there's no motive for him. I mean, he doesn't have a squeaky clean alibi, does he? He can't really account for those hours. His girlfriend wasn't with him. The cuts and scratches on him, yeah, she said he might have got it surfing. It's quite possible. There is no witnesses to say that he was surfing on that particular evening. And the fact that he had to hock or pawn his girlfriend's clarinet to get the money to pay for Ravel, that would suggest to me that he had no funds readily available, although of course he might have planned for a longer session with Ravel and topped up the funds. That's quite possible. As we saw during the presentation, the cost of an escort visit back then was between 150 and 200 Australian dollars. Back in the day, as an archetypal starving artist, I pawned quite a few items at hock shops or pawnbrokers in Sydney, and they don't give you anywhere near the value of the object you are pawning. So I'm thinking he would have got maybe an hour's worth of time with Ravel with the money he got from the pawnbrokers for the clarinet. So unless he had other funds, there's no way he could have paid for an extra moonlighting hour or two with Ravel. So that's quite strange, I find. And the fact that he washed and cleaned the bed sheets, it does seem strange if the girlfriend says he's never done it before. I can understand why the police have him still under the magnifying glass. Of course, one piece of evidence most certainly in Mr. Samer's favour is the fact that Ravel herself telephoned the agency and said that she had arrived at the client's house, and also telephoned them again at 5:15 p.m. saying that she had concluded the appointment. And most importantly of all, the fact that she rang her friend and said, that she would like to meet up at the pub. I think the friend would have noticed if there was any uncertainty in her voice. So at 7:15 p.m. she was still alive, and Mr. Samer had no reason, if he was lying, to tell the police that she stayed longer. He could have said that she had left at the scheduled time that the escort agency knew of. That would appear to me at least that she was still alive and had most certainly concluded business with Mr. Samer. Yeah, here we see that he's been living a reclusive life in Tasmania at least the past 15 years. This is Mark Coulton. Apologies during the video. I was doing an American accent. I'm thinking Palm Beach in America. Actually Palm Beach, Queensland, Australia. That's how he looked then. What is this crap? I hate these pop-ups. That was his then girlfriend, Robin Galway. She died tragically aged 32 in 1995. What a pretty lady. Apparently here I found something. Sorry it's cut off, but the relevant information is not. Australian model called Robin Galway who died of AIDS. She was in INXS film clips and friends with them. So according to this blog, she died of AIDS. This is what Mark Coulton looks like now. A bit of a difference. 56. This is from the news.com.au website. The claims that he made, which he says were highly exaggerated and that he was drunk and that it was not true. If he knows what happened to her, then eventually in the afterlife he's going to have to face up to that. If he doesn't know and he was just talking BS that night full of champagne, then it's just some unfortunate remarks he made. But if he does know, it's never too late to confess and tell the cops what you know. There could be several reasons why he wouldn't want to do that. He may live in fear of his life, that if he confessed they would come and get him, make him disappear. But I would not like to have that on my conscience, that's for sure. If he does have the knowledge what happened to her, her poor family wants to have some closure. Somebody knows what happened to her. It is possible that it could have been an opportunity crime and nothing to do with any of these guys that have been mentioned in this presentation. Somebody knows what happened to her. By the way, there is a 1 million Australian dollar reward for information leading to the arrest of the person or persons involved with her disappearance and probable murder. Anybody out there who has some information, you can leave a comment under my video, or there is their number, 1800 333 000. That's their number if you have any information They're also police have released an image of a man and are appealing for public assistance to identify him as part of ongoing investigations into the disappearance of Ravel Balmain. This is the guy here. I can't scroll too far down or suddenly I'm going to get a pop-up saying log in. This guy here. Anybody recognizes this guy? He may not be in Australia now. They haven't disclosed why they want to know who he is, but it is apparently something to do with information that was given to them, including this photograph, and they haven't disclosed why they're looking for him, but this person is of interest to the New South Wales Police. They want to know who he is. So anybody out there that recognizes this chap, get in touch with the aforementioned number. Well, being an old-timer, and I never thought I would hear myself say that, but being an old-timer, I can actually tell you a little bit about the bar where Ravel was last seen, or, according to the client, where he last dropped her off. It's called now Churchill's Sport Bar. Can you see that? At the time, it was called the Red Tomato Inn, and I remember it originally as the White House pub. Because my sister, let me go down there, she lived in one of these blocks here back in the 80s. So let's head down there. See if I can remember which one it was. Okay, it was this one here. She actually lived up these stairs in this, there were flats, they were divided into flats. She lived there. So the pub, it's all changed now, but the pub was, when I say changed, let's head down. Yeah. Oh, you can still, I'm not sure if you can get in there. Goodness, what am I doing? These apps drive me mad. It's all changed a bit. This wasn't there. But anyway, the White House pub was here on the corner, and there'll be a big car park, outside car park. You'd go around to the back. Now, I remember it being not a nice place. I didn't really go to pubs much back then, but a few years later, when I was living in Randwick, I would occasionally pop down here, and it always had a bad vibe. There was a lot of selling of drugs going on, and just an aura of suppressed violence. That's how I remember it, and the people I went with too remember it that way. I'm going to try and get round over there. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this thing. Yeah, you can't really see it. I don't remember those trees being there at all. We're talking about the late 80s and the 90s. I didn't like it. But now anyone, and this is probably going to be for the people when it eventually gets to YouTube, anyone from this area who is also an old timer, if they remember, here we go, this is it, it's now called Churchill's, was the Red Tomato Inn. That is where apparently Ravel was last seen. As I sort of mentioned in my last presentation, when I believed I had seen the victim, there used to be, now I'm not sure whether it was separate to this, whether it was a part of the Red Tomato Inn or a separate pub altogether, because it's nearly 30 years, and yeah, I've got an old man's memory now. But the Kensington, anybody out there, was the Kensington a part of the Red Tomato Inn? Because if you look at the old records of that pub, I think it was originally called the Kensington. Let's have a quick look. Here we go. Here we have a photo of the same pub. And look, it's called the Kensington. I'm going to zoom in. It's called the Kensington. That's what it was originally called. That was in 1934. 1930 is that photo. Here is 1934. Was called the Kensington. I can just get down there. You can't really see any image there. And here we have an image, looks to be from the 50s, 1950s. It's the same pub. It may even, I think it's called the White House at this stage. The White House, hence the white facade there. So it could have been a part of the original building, the Kensington. And my mates, we would go down there on a Thursday evening because, now I can't see any other pubs down here. So correct me if I'm wrong. It may have been part of this building. Thursday evenings they would have half-price beers, and you would get free little sausage pies and sausage rolls. They would bring them out, and they had topless ladies serving it. I'm not going to apologize for that, but we really went down for the half-price beers. You couldn't beat that. Anyway, we were down there. I think they served that for an hour or 2 hours, and it wasn't far from where we lived, so we'd head down there. Anyway, we were down there one evening, and we were playing on the pool table. They had these pool tables, and the bouncer came up and said, could we mind when we finished our game, not to start a new one, because there was going to be a stripper who used the top of the pool table, to do her dance. And we said, sure. When we heard on the news sometime later that she disappeared, we were convinced that was the same girl who did the dance. We were absolutely convinced, and for that to be in our mind at the time, we must have been, it was either her or it was a doppelganger, someone that just looked like her. I can only assume that it was her. Maybe it wasn't. Please forgive me, Ravel, if it was not you, but we thought it was. When we saw the image of her in the newspaper, who said that was her. That was her, but it must have been some weeks afterwards. We didn't go to the police because it didn't have anything to do with the crime, and nobody threatened her or did anything intimidating to her at the time. So it did say that she knew exotic dancer strippers, and she was a dancer herself, and I guess they would have paid quite good money for that. Anyway, that is my story. Yeah, not a very nice pub, and even when they changed it into the Red Tomato, I don't know, it was soulless. They had people playing poker machines like zombies. It was really horrible. There was no atmosphere to the place. I'm sure there's going to be some people who correct me and probably had great evenings there. I remember back in the late 80s going down there with a Czech pilot, Air Force pilot, to score some weed, and we got ripped off by some Maoris, and then when we complained about it, they basically threatened to beat the shit out of us. So that was my memory of the White House at that time. But every time I went back there, didn't like it. I preferred the Coach and Horses in Randwick, the Racecourse Hotel at the same place. Here was my local, the Coach and Horses. It's still called the Coach and Horses. Why is this all wonky? Does anybody know? I have no idea why it is wonky, but there we go. Hang on. Sorry for making you dizzy. Yeah, this was the Coach and Horses. Back in the 80s, it was a great pub. Fantastic pub. Bit rough and ready, and it had a previous history as a bit of a bloodbath. There was a lot of fighting going on, but I liked it in the late 80s. And then in the 90s, they did this horrible renovation job, modernized it inside and put poker machines in, and I didn't like it anymore, but there you go. And I just lived up the road, up here, and it's not on a slant. In real life, I lived up there. Yeah, there's the Coach. Anyway, sorry for boring you with that. Why is this all slanted? Look at this street now. There used to be a big old petrol station, had a 1950s Coca-Cola machine in it that didn't work, which was full of beer. And if you knew the owner, you could go in 24 hours a day. So usually in the night you would go around because it was a taxi rank. And you paid a bit over the odds, but you could get beer out of that Coca-Cola machine. He'd open it up for you. But later on, this pub had a 24-hour license. So you didn't need to do that anymore. And that's it for that. We're just going to take a look at the back of my 1930s gramophone. It's a Sky Raider, a Reliant Sky Raider. This is an old valve radio that I bought when I was 21, and all I wanted to do was to clean the dust, because with the cat sheds so much fur, it's unbelievable. I've already vacuumed. I didn't want to show you what a mess it was behind here. Hadn't cleaned it in about 5 years. Anyway, that's the inner workings. And coincidentally, to coincide with the feature, the Vintage Crime feature that I'm doing about Kingsford, let me just get the camera on that. I'm right in the dark here.
Can you read that? This actually, that's the original delivery docket for a lady in Kingsford. In the 1930s, this was delivered to her, and I've kept it on. I've just left that. I've left the old docket on there. Amazing. I bought this when I was 21 from an antique or junk store, second-hand store, whatever you want to call it. I've had it ever since. It used to play. It's got the old plug on. I lived in a really old flat that had these, still had these old plug sockets. I haven't tried it since. I don't know whether it works anymore. There's not many stations left to get, so I just thought I'd share that with you. For those of you who haven't seen it before, this is its Art Deco form, and I haven't looked in here for years. This is that velvet action. Wow, a bit dusty in here, but it's been covered all the time by the lid. It's like Bakelite, can you see that? This was actually the original record that was in it when I bought it. What's it called? I by the Gaylords. Well, that certainly has a different connotation nowadays. Oh my goodness. Never even played this record. I don't think that works. If I remember correctly, this doesn't actually work, the turntable. Yeah, it was just the radio that worked.
Well, I think that's about it. We're coming up to about 40 minutes now. So, yeah, wrap it up. Let me know your thoughts if you have any, because Amy Keaton has updated the last illustration that she did. I think I will actually make this into a t-shirt and mug, and this will probably be a giveaway prize now that my air boner has been covered with my top hat. It should now pass Zazzle's strict regulations regarding full frontal nudity. Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Alright my dears, on that note I will love you and leave you and see you next time. Take care, God bless and stay safe.